Hey, Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. Hey, I am Nick Murawski. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast, doing it weekly, doing it live on our GGTB YouTube channel. Please join us, subscribe. We appreciate that. You can find the audio everywhere. We are celebrating here season 6. Here at Good Guys Talk Back. Got a ton of White Sox stuff to get to. A lot of rumors, of course, and things that could be going down here in these winter meetings in Nashville. But with me, as always, my very, very good friend, lifelong Sox fan, Mr. Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Hey, happy anniversary, buddy.
Yeah.
Good job. Congratulations to you. This is everybody knows this is your baby, and this is something that not a lot of people can keep together. 6 years of anything is quite an accomplishment. So my hat's off to you, my friend. Congratulations. Happy 6-year anniversary. And I know what you're doing for your anniversary. You're refreshing Jeff Passan and anybody else that's following the winter meetings. Our good news or bad news, buddy,
Bobby, sure.
Just to
Morrissey,
to give us some great news. And we're all fans of baseball are on Ohtani watch. So where's Shohei going to go? That's going to be the most interesting thing of the offseason. Are we the surprise team? Who knows? The dark horse. Could we get a seat at the table?
Man, seat at the table. Yeah. I mean, where are these people going to land? We've got guys on the White Sox roster. Where could they leave the White Sox roster? Where are they going to land? There's so many others. This is the time for that. Obviously, the meetings that happened a few weeks ago, seeds planted. You could even probably go back to the trade deadline where there's been conversations. Teams have an idea of what other teams' farm systems look like. Conversations get started, and some things galvanize here in the winter meetings. But before we really get into everything, hey, really appreciate the folks that have been with us whether you've been with us from day one, way back when in the winter meetings of 2018, or you just found us recently. Boy, I mean, just the way this podcast has grown and to hear, from fans for so many years now that, we're with them on commutes or at the gym or, in their office or whatever, however you consume Good Guys Talk Back. I can't do it without you guys, and really appreciate the continued support. So this is the time where we kick off a new season, and, there's a lot that has changed in how we do this podcast, Pat. I mean, when we started, it was in person. We would record in person, and then with COVID and, Zoom and StreamYard and all these other ways to be able to do this without having to get into, in person, it's made things a little bit easier. So how we've podcasted and how we've recorded, and this podcast has evolved so much, but here we are in terms of the Sox talking about, a quasi rebuild almost. We're coming up to the anniversary of the Chris Sale trade.
Yeah.
Okay. But by the time we talk next time, we'll have already had that anniversary, like December 6th, December 7th, something like that. Boom. 2016, Chris Sale, everything went in a different direction for the Sox. Here we are, early December, 2023. I mean, everything's cyclical, and it feels like we're kind of right back to that square one. Will the Sox trade Dylan Cease? That's the big asset. Of course, Luis Robert Jr., which we'll talk about, but Dylan Cease is the one that, everybody's talking about. Will the Sox hold on to him and of course, wait for the best offer? Could that go into the regular season? I mean, do you feel like we're all the way back to kind of square one from 2016?
Yeah, it feels like we just went through a roller coaster ride. I mean, really terrible pun, right? To think about it. A lot of people can use a roller coaster to liken to life sometimes.
Sure.
But this 6 years that you and I have been doing this has been a roller coaster ride. It was you're going up the first drop, right? And it's a little bit scary. You don't know what to expect. but the thrill of getting past that clink, 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 those couple of years of the 90 plus losses and the tanking for a reason, but you knew that you were coming up to the top of that hill, and you go, Eloy's coming. I've seen all the home runs in AAA, and it's Luis Robert Jr. guy, and all the Moncada, and this guy we got from here, and everybody's big on Hahn, right? He's the one. He's the boss. He's in charge. Kenny Williams is taking a back seat now. It's Rick's time to shine. Clink, 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 up, 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 and boom, you're in the roller coaster. And then you get some other little peaks and valleys, and you've got a pandemic that interrupts, our good feelings for a little bit. And then you come out of that, and the season starts, and you're enjoying a couple years of success, right? A couple years of success with 2 playoff victories, Nick. And then you threw up a couple times. The ride was fantastic. And then you saw some things that, boy, I don't know if my seatbelt works very well. Holy cow, the lap bar just came off. I might be flying out of this damn thing. And you're puking all over yourself watching what you've seen over the last 2 years, the 500 team and the 100+ loss team. And now we've come to the end of the ride, Nick. And we're getting back into the station. You know how it has that violent, jerk on a roller coaster.
Sure. Yeah.
Whoosh, and in your back, and then you think, okay, I've got vomit all over myself.
It's quite the image.
From the
quite
last
the image.
few years.
Yeah.
And but you know what? At this amusement park today, it's extremely rainy. It's a terrible day, and there's nobody in line. I'm gonna hop the line. I'm gonna get on this ride again, and here we go. Here we go to ride this ride again, Nick.
Yeah, I had a lot of different conversations with, folks this past week, in and out on social media and then Twitter X. And I mean, that's kind of the essence of this podcast is, I kind of created it with that. I use that term fan-centric because you have arguments and you have conversations, and there is no right or wrong answer. Like, everybody fans how they want to fan, what you use as your focal point, what you pay attention to, what hill you want to die on. These are the types of conversations you and I had and other people in our life when we would go to a sports bar and we would just talk Sox. You would just talk hypotheticals. You hear about this. We wouldn't get too much into the analytical stuff and the metric stuff and the stuff that kind of makes your brain numb, but you just have these open-ended White Sox conversations. And one of the things that I started to, I got a vibe from this past week is that, the prospects and all the failure, let's call it that, the failure of the rebuild. Okay. And something was built. Okay, folks, they built something. It just didn't work out. So now we have to rebuild something. The failure of all that was from Hahn and Williams. And that was their issue. We now know that there was so many miscommunication things and stuff going on behind the scenes, and Hahn and Williams screwed that whole thing up. They're the ones that screwed up all the stuff and why there were busts and why things didn't work out. And what I'm hearing from some Sox fans is this is different this time because Getz is doing it. Getz is in charge. And, we're going to flip Cease for some players. And then Jerry is going to green light to spend. This is what I'm hearing.
Who are you talking to?
They're going to be able to fill some holes. And this is going to be different because now Getz is in charge and he's got do you feel that way? Do you feel like a refreshing, like, oh, it's going to, we got one person apparently making the decisions, Getz, and we're done with Hahn and Williams. It's going to be way different this time.
Were you doing like a man on the street report outside of Uncle Richie's in Lockport and just some drunken derelicts coming out telling you these things?
You heard of the White Sox? Oh, you have. I've got some.
Hi, Nick Murawski here, man on the street, here for your White Sox.
How about
opinions.
that? We should really. Oh man, a man on the street. Wouldn't that be something this season? Boy, if you can find anybody.
Here, I understand why people want to go that way, and I think all fans deep down in their heart really want to have that. I got to have something positive to glean to, right? So we're going into a new off season with a new general manager. It's new, But again, I'll go back to what I was just kind of this story of going up and down a roller coaster with what we felt at the beginning of the first rebuild with Rick Hahn, because though Rick Hahn had been part of this organization for a long time, it seemingly was Kenny Williams pulling the strings for the majority of the time. It had seemed at that point that the reins were off of Rick Hahn and he could do what he wanted. And I at one point was really high on Rick. It was a different voice. It seemed like, and I think he could talk you into him sounding like he was smart and intellectual, and he is. He's a very learned gentleman, and he's not a stupid person by any means. But he wasn't fully in control, and he wasn't able to do all the things he wanted. Hell, he couldn't even trade with two teams in Major League Baseball.
Right.
That was reserved for Kenny Williams. And oh, by the way, he couldn't even hire his own manager that he wanted. He went, so the screw up came really for me when you're talking about the rebuild is when Tony was brought in as the manager, because that really undermined everything that Rick wanted to do or had planned. Now, I'm not telling you it would have worked if Ricky Renteria had stayed the manager. I don't know. You and I have talked a lot, though. It seemed like that group that was still a lot of the same group that was there last year, which seemingly hated each other, loved each other at that point. And maybe they loved each other because it was still fun and they were still exciting and young, and it was us against the world, and there was the swag, and it was the new thing, and it was fun at that point. But ever since Tony came on board, it seemed like it was a lot of like scratching of heads and not understanding what's going on. And obviously there was a disconnect within the front office. So you have the boss making decisions for people that are supposed to be making these decisions, undermining what you're supposed to be doing. You could obviously tell Rick was bothered by that, and everything rolls downhill, Nick. So from that point on, it just seemingly got worse somehow, even though it was a 93 win team under Tony in the first year and it was a playoff appearance. It just seemingly got worse, and it just felt worse, even though that the talent was able to rise above all that crap, but it couldn't sustain itself for that long.
Yeah, I agree with Mailman Jack in the comments here on our YouTube feed. That burger trade, I mean, you go back just recently at the trade deadline, which I really think was the time of death for this White Sox team. What they were trying to build, after the Chris Sale trade, that exposed some situations with Kenny, with Rick, who could do what, who could trade with. I'm still shaking my head over that one, especially with everything now that's gone on. But we've seen a lot. We've talked a lot about the missing piece, or like how can the Sox go and take the division, take the league, take the entire organization, take all of Major League Baseball. And another thing that I was hearing, in some of my little conversations, and again, I call them conversations on Twitter. They're not like you throw stuff you throw stuff out, someone throws stuff back. Every now and then you'll be able to have an engaging back and forth that both people are seemingly listening to what, is going on. The feeling I got is, well, Kansas City's where they're at as usual. Detroit is not quite there. Cleveland's ready to trade away Clase and do what they do and never really making that step. Minnesota, they haven't made, or they don't seem to be making strides. This is the Sox division. They could go out and they could take this division. You don't have to do a lot to take the AL Central. That's the argument we've been hearing quite a bit, right? It's a weak division. So the Sox have money. They just need to make a couple moves here and there, and they can take the division. My rebuttal is, if that is the case, they could have taken the division a long time ago. It should have already been had. They should have had the division by two hands. They had the ability to. And if you think Chicago has money, and they can go out and do that, why wasn't it done? So one of the things, Pat, in the whole rebuild conversation, and here we go again, is, yeah, okay, Getz is in charge. And yeah, we might have some new exciting crop of young guys, Colson Montgomery, some arms, and whatever you get for Dylan Cease if he's going to be gone soon. And, a couple guys here and there, they develop. But is there going to be the finishing pieces? That was the problem for me.
Yeah.
Is we didn't get those finishing pieces. You have to have the veterans. You can't just hope on these prospects working out. We've seen that already. We've been through that. You've got to go after premium talent that's out there for the taking. Go get that, spend the money. That's where I know, hey, we're still living under Jerry's rule. I don't think that would happen this time.
And there was never a point when in several off seasons where the Sox looked at the roster and said, we have too many guys that are the same. We have too many first base DH guys. We really shouldn't hold pat to these assets and try and, what is the old saying, round peg, square hole type of thing. Like we're trying to make guys play positions that they can't play and make them be something they can't be, instead of saying, you know what, we should move off of this guy and see what we can get for them and try and fill a hole here or there and move off of some things that just really weren't working for you. You held on to Aloy's still here. I don't think he'll be here much longer, but you've held on to him way too long. You and I think early on we're big fans of his, right? The charisma, the personality, the seemingly fun nature that is Eloy Jimenez, but seemingly the laziness and lack of ability to stay in shape and keep yourself on the field and just be available really makes him dislikable. So those were the things that a lot of Jerry teams have done in the past too. It's holding on to guys way too long when other teams and good organizations go, let's pivot and move off of this because you can never have enough pitching. So let's use this to get pitching because we're redundant in this spot. Let's make a move here. Or we're never going to be satisfied with what we've done. The Sox seemingly have been satisfied with 2 playoff appearances, one being in a COVID year. Other good organizations don't get satisfied unless they win the World Series. The Braves aren't satisfied. That's why they're going to continue to go the way they are. The Dodgers are never going to be satisfied with what they have. Yeah. And they've only had the one World Series. I think the one World Series in the past. I don't know, a couple of tries. It was the
COVID year, right?
But they're always knocking on the door, and you can always expect them to be there. So those are organizations that seemingly know how to take care of their fan base, and they're generally managed well. They've got good organizations, good scouts, good development, everything about what they do is good. Everything about what we do is like, okay, keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Because if this division is bad and this guy pans out and we get lightning in a bottle with this guy, it could all come together and the stars will align. Other organizations that are good organizations don't look at it and go, boy, I really hope the stars align and we're good this year.
Yeah. And the argument of like, well, these other clubs had small payrolls, but they were successful. Well, have you ever thought about their development? Their organization as a whole, their scouting, maybe those draft picks, those prospects, they were vetted. Those were done in a better way than what happened with the Sox. How many draft picks, how many high draft picks that we had throughout this rebuild. I mean, you got nothing from them.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing. And there's several that were still just like, I don't even know if this is someone to build around.
And you and I aren't smart enough to know if the guys that they've drafted really weren't worth drafting, or if they just never were developed properly. Had they been drafted by another organization, would they have flourished? Who knows? But seemingly they have not been able to fill the pipeline enough to have an abundance of assets to move around and use like you should use a system. We use our system as, okay, these are all the guys we have. We need them all to come up at the same time and all be successful at the exact same time. Otherwise, this is going to work. And if it doesn't, it's going to look like it does right now, Nick, where we are at the bottom of the barrel in terms of a system. And you've got nothing other than one guy everybody's like hoping that will come up. And And I'm excited about like a lot of. I talked with somebody today at a baptism, Nick, that he's like, oh, what do you think? Is he going to be up? And I said, from what I was told, he probably wouldn't come up at least until September.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, but oh, really? I can't believe that. It's like, why? Why would you bring him up now?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let him develop as much as humanly possible before you bring this guy up. There's no reason to.
And I'm sorry, but again, like, he could be great. Colson Montgomery could be just an absolute stud. I'm not putting all my hope in that. I've been down that road. And that's not being, I don't think that's being negative. That's just being realistic. I'll wait. I'll wait and I'll wait, show me it. Show me it. And that's exciting because I've gotten into a lather over players. We all have. And I've been down that road before. So, like, let's wait. Let me just be patient and I'll wait. Yeah. Okay. But there are proven players that are out there that when the time comes, if the Sox are serious, I don't know if they ever will be under Reinsdorf, go get those players. Use premium money to get premium talent. Sure, you need to hit on some prospects and some young guys, and you've got to develop a system, but you also have to go out and finish the job, with proven talent that's there. So you talk about a weak farm system. You talk about, hey, we need guys. What assets do we have? Of course, it's Dylan Cease. That's the talk. Every article, every blurb from Nightingale to Morrissey to Rosenthal is so many teams are checking in Cease. Baltimore, Atlanta, the Dodgers. Getz most likely will hold and wait. He'll be patient. That makes sense. Wait for maybe some of these starting pitchers to sign that are free agents. Teams might get desperate and offer a bigger reward for Dylan Cease. Teams like Baltimore, I don't think are going to break the bank on a starting pitcher on the market. I don't see them going crazy. I think they need the pitching. Every team does, of course, if you want to go deep. I don't see them overspending or spending big. So that's where I see the trade. And maybe they might get a little panicky of, oh, wow, like we've got to do this. I don't know. It's an interesting angle to see how Getz plays this. To your point with LA, Nightingale said like they want to go for the jugular. Like right now they're I think maybe in on Ohtani too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in on a lot of guys. And I think they can re-sign Dylan Cease when his contract's up eventually. This isn't a couple-year rental or whatever. And so maybe we're waiting, for some of these starting pitchers to go off the market and see what they get, what they command money-wise. And then you've got Getz kind of waiting around. What's your vibe, Pat? What do you feel? What's your gut? Is this going to get done during the winter meetings, or is this something that might play out for a while?
I feel like it's going to happen over the winter meetings. I think we'll have some news before the end of the week, honestly. I mean, it's seemingly the rumors got pretty hot and heavy, just before the winter meetings started. And today is day one of the meetings, if I'm not mistaken. So I think as we go over the next couple of days, there's going to be a lot of, as there usually is, there's going to be a lot of rumor. I think there'll be actually some action from the White Sox before the end of the winter meetings or shortly thereafter. And you talk about the Orioles, and somebody put in the chat that the Orioles have a great GM, and I'm sure they do. I don't know. You have to have all the young players that they have assembled, but the Orioles haven't been relevant in a long, long time. I don't know how they will react in this position. They're playing in the AL East, where they seemingly for the last, 20 years have been one of the bottom feeders behind the Sox and the Red Sox, that is, the Yankees and the Rays. So they're in a position of, wow, for the first time in a long time, this could be our division. How do we act? How do we act in this position? Because they know in that division, people are going to eventually be coming after them. You're not like in the AL Central where it's like, oh, we can stay up at the top of this division. Nobody's going to bother us for a long, long time. People are coming after them. So are they desperate enough to make moves now because they're in a win now mode, like hyper win now mode versus what we would be in that position? Yeah. Probably, in my opinion. Because that it's not going to be long before the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Rays are always a threat to come after that leader. So interesting.
And that is where, of course, Getz has to, wait, and see how he can play other teams off. Who's going to get desperate? Is somebody gets so desperate that they get kind of crazy when pitching starts getting taken off the board? People are spending to get pitching. They're like, you know what? I've got the money. I don't need to play this trading game. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to get it. Now, Baltimore's got a farm system. LA's got a great farm system. I don't think Atlanta has a very good farm system. They keep getting mentioned, in these conversations. So, and it goes back to, well, why Dylan Cease? Why are we trading Dylan Cease? And I think there's some younger fans that are, what's the deal here? Why are we going to give away one of our best pitchers? And it's not a Boris thing necessarily. This is how the Sox operate under Reinsdorf.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to pitching, the Sox do not pay premium money to acquire or retain starting pitching. They just don't. They've put a lot of money in bullpen as of late, but in terms of starting pitching, that hasn't been the case. So you're going to let him walk, or are you going to say, hey, we need to go in a different direction? Whatever's been going on the last couple of years, it hasn't worked. Getz is now here. Okay. We need to go in a different direction. If Getz has a different vision, coupled with Grifol and everybody else now in this brain trust, well, we're not going to retain Cease. We can use him to replenish, in terms of pitching, that's just been the MO for the Sox. So that's why I see it. That's why I see it is going to happen.
And then that's why I see it happening quickly, Nick, because I couldn't envision a scenario that he starts the season as a White Sox at this point. It just doesn't seem like that's a realistic approach. It wouldn't be an approach that I would have. I would just be so worried. He's been so blessed in terms of injury with a team that has been plagued with injury after injury after injury. He's the one guy that's gone out there and he's put up a lot of innings.
He absolutely is.
Even though it doesn't seem like he puts up a lot of innings per outing, by the end of the year, he has put up a lot of innings the last couple of years. He's gone out there and taken the ball.
He's
every
a strikeout pitcher. Yeah.
And he's been available, Nick, which is something you need. I just don't know. Eventually, it seems like these guys always hurt something, whether it's a shoulder or an elbow.
So that's why risk it, right?
I wouldn't. There's no way I would risk it. And I mean, the violence in which he throws his slider, the torque that puts on an elbow. I just would have to think that an injury is probably coming his way soon, and I wouldn't play the odds of having him start the season just to think you could get a little bit better of a deal as you get closer to the trade deadline. Yeah. Now, in theory, you could, because people are going to be desperate, and all the teams that are in play right now are probably going to be in play for him still as you get to the trade deadline, and it just makes that price tag go up and up because you're looking now at getting closer to the playoffs, and he could be the final piece for you that puts you over the top. But you also run the risk of him having a season like he had this past year, where it wasn't so great and his stock falls. So yeah, I don't think there's any good that can come from him, unless, of course, obviously he goes out there and dominates and has no injuries. I mean, that's the best case scenario, but I just don't see that happening. I don't see him having a great season and being non-injured both in this year.
Now, you could just hold on to Cease and say, you know what, we're going to hold on to him for the duration of his contract, and we are going to see where we're at in the AL Central, and that's fine too. You'll be rooting for Dylan Cease. There's not going to be a lot else in that starting rotation for a while. And you're almost going to be, in a weird way, holding him hostage. I don't think by the time the Sox are having sustained success, I just don't want a one-off or they sneak into the playoffs, but they've got some sustained success if it can happen. It didn't happen in the previous plan. I'm hoping this time around that's what I'm looking for, is some sustained success, some smart building. I don't think, Cease is going to be around for that. So what's the point? I'm with you. I don't think Dylan Cease pitches in 2024 for the White Sox at all. I don't think he's going to move in the winter meetings. I could be very wrong. Usually, we record an episode and then 2 days later, something completely changes depending on how desperate teams are. If pitchers start flying off the board and get signed, it's like, well, here we are. We've got the last thing. We've got Dylan Cease here. And obviously, when you have that situation and you've got teams bidding against one another, that it all is going to come down to the scenario of what's left and all that kind of stuff. Luis Robert Jr., Getz has talked about how nobody's untouchable, but the underlining thing from a lot of, quote unquote experts is, well, Luis Robert Jr. is your untouchable. That's the person to build around. And I have no, doubts about that. He is an amazing talent to be witnessing this, and he stayed healthy. And I think the big question is, can he do that for a second year, a back-to-back situation and put up those types of numbers? That's, again, talk about sustainability. That's something for an individual athlete to string together. And I think a lot of executives are going to be looking at that closely and what his future is going to be. I don't think the Sox, again, are having sustained success when Luis Robert Jr. in his contract. I just don't think that. I'm sorry. Again, I don't think to me, that's not negative. It's just realistic with this type of organization. If Jerry shows us that he's willing to spend premium money and really go after certain guys to fill holes like right field and second base that we've been dying to have proven talent at, well, then maybe they can capitalize with Luis Robert Jr. still under contract. I don't think he's somebody that is really being shopped around at all. I think they might take calls on, but I wouldn't be extremely bothered if they decided to trade Luis Robert Jr. If Getz got a deal that just blew him away. These are the people that I absolutely want. This is the vision. This follows in line with the vision that I have and what I've talked about with, my brain trust. Then I would say, pull the trigger if that's what you want to do. Because I don't think Luis Robert Jr. is re-signed by the White Sox down the line. And if you're going to try to rebuild a system, well, of course, that's another humongous asset. Do I get the fact that you're not going to necessarily get that return? You're not going to get, Luis Robert Jr. quality back. I understand that. But if Getz wants to go in a different direction, I think, he would have to entertain all options right now.
Well, I understand all that, but I think a couple things. One, I don't know what the life of his contract is. How many years he has left?
3 or 4, I think.
So if he's got 3 or 4 years left, I would say he'll still be in his prime in 3 or 4 years. And it all depends on really what Getz looks at this rebuild. Now, I think Rick Hahn was pretty transparent. Maybe the only time he was ever really transparent about how long the rebuild would take the first time. And I think everybody kind of had their, it was kind of assumed by most Sox fans, you're looking at 4 to 5 years in terms of a rebuild. I don't necessarily know that. I could be completely wrong, but I don't get the vibe that right now that they're looking at a 4 or 5 year rebuild with where we're at right now. I think what they're trying to do is retool on the fly, maximize the trades of the guys that they have, and get a bunch in return. Maybe not all high quality, but a bunch of people back in return. And Nick, who knows? I mean, quite honestly, if you're looking at a 4 to 5 year commitment for Luis Robert Jr. that he has left on this contract, this might not be the same ownership group in 4 to 5 years, Nick. I mean, that's something that we have to seriously start to think about.
That is an excellent point, and that's the wild card, man.
And I know that's an unforeseeable type thing, and nobody knows the answer to that because we've heard some rumors about things, obviously that week of news that came out about the Sox moving and then the Sox, looking to sell and they're still trying to figure out the gunshot under the belly fat type of situation that was happening. The week from hell that the White Sox had of all this bad news coming out. I don't know what the ownership group will look like in 4 to 5 years. And in 4 to 5 years, Jerry will be in his 90s. Is that right? No, maybe not. Maybe
Yes.
not.
I
Will he
think
be
he's
in his 90s?
87. I feel like he's 87. Yeah.
I, who knows what it all looks like then. If I'm Chris Getz, I don't. I probably am not looking at this as a long term rebuild. You know how they feel about the division, and it's always there to be had. I think that they just needed to get it more into this team more in a way and to play it a way that their manager likes, a more athletic team that plays defense. I think even talking with some people over the weekend, I think they could be an improved team just based on the fact that they'll be, in theory, they're going to be better defenders. They're going to be more athletic if that's what they're going to put out there. I think that could be improve this team. Not that they're going to be great. They're not going to be a good team this year, but they may be better this year just because they'll be better defensively, and maybe they'll run the bases better. I don't know that either for a fact, but feel like that's the vision for the team for this year. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if trading Luis Robert Jr. is the best thing or not, but I guess it really depends on how long the rebuild they envision this to be. If it's more than 3 years, then I'd say yes, trade him. If they're looking at it as a 2-year thing, I think you want him on this team when this team is on the rise.
Yeah, Jared said Jerry's going to be 91 in Luis's final year. So again, Luis Robert Jr. is not, in my mind, a guy you're really trying to actively shop around. I don't think so for a lot of those points that you made, but I think you listen. And I get it. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to say, well, why would you get rid of, the one person that's marketable right now, the one player that everybody wants to see, the one player that you really can't replace, that you want to build around. It's that time frame. It's that window. Like, well, where are you going to be in 3-4 years as a club? And I know you kind of have to do a difficult thing and see in the future, but that's what you have to do. And you have to say, can I get some amazing prospects? Can I get the farm and start developing them and get them playing together in this vision, how we want to play and what Getz sees and Grifol sees? So in 4 years, we're all clicking on, the same cylinder. You know what I mean? Like, when you want to start the future, you want to start it now. Like you want to get it going right now. But you're not. I get it. You're not going to get Luis Robert Jr. type players. So why not just have Luis Robert Jr. in 3 years? But then it comes back to pitching. You know how I feel about pitching. This isn't, a hot take. It's pitching. Pitching is what you need. You need depth. When you have enough pitching, go get more pitching. I don't see what they have right now in pitching. Yeah, there could be some exciting arms down there that we might see in a couple of years, and we're going to get a look at some guys in 2024. Huge question marks. I have no idea what the rotation is going to look like this year or beyond. You need pitching. You absolutely need it. How are you going to get it? Is Jerry going to go buy pitching when we need it, when we need to lock down the starting rotation? We've covered that already this episode and beyond. I don't think he is. So you're going to have to develop your pitching. Well, how are you going to get, blue chip guys? It's with the assets that you have. Do you see that conundrum?
Well, and that's, what, I mean, that'll be the interesting part. Let's go back to where we started this from, and people talking about it. It's exciting because it's different, because it's Getz. I don't know that I'm excited because it's a different person. I'm just really I'm more intrigued by what his philosophy is going to be, right? And it's going to be a different philosophy than the last group of people that was in here. He's got some people around him now that he trusts. There's a good chemistry, obviously, with the manager. I'm interested to see the way he takes these things, and then coming out of the winter meetings, and then as we get into spring training, how is he addressing the group, and how is he addressing the media, and what he's done to build this team, and what his vision is? Because again, you look at the end of last year, and it was, we can be competitive again in 2025, or 2024 rather. Then it turned to, well, let's temper those expectations to a lot of people being traded and moved away from, and now a lot of rumors. So I'm more interested to now see the action from a Chris Gatz who doesn't like his team, to getting us to spring training. Let's see how the winter goes. And then really kind of maybe hearing more of what his actual plan is, right? And like, this is why we did this. This is what we're moving to. These are the types of guys now that we have in. It's a good start. And I don't think a lot of GMs are going to come out and say, well, this will be in 2 years, are going to be fantastic. I don't think anybody's going to come out and say those types of things, but it's intriguing to say the least. I don't know that I'm all that excited about Chris Gatz because I don't know yet. Prove it to me what you can do.
I mean, this is all new to him. Like he's never done any of this stuff before. We didn't do an actual search because Jerry knew all of the options out there, and anybody that you brought in from outside the organization was going to have to spend forever to try to figure out how to fix something. But if they have success and they've done it over and over in other organizations, you don't need that much time. You know how it goes. This is the plan. I've done this successfully in other organizations. Okay. I've got the resume. I don't need to learn all about your organization. This is how it goes. Gatz is, he's wide-eyed. So this is his first go around. He's learning on the fly. I don't expect much out of him at all. This is the route they went. Okay, he's got new visions. Great. It's under his watch. Wonderful. He seems to be in sync with Grifol. They're trying to get a different identity. That all sounds great. We've heard this stuff offseason after offseason. They win the offseason sometimes by what they say, and it all sounds great and wonderful, and it'll go even into Arizona. And I don't even care about the numbers in terms of, well, in 2 years they're going to be good. Define good. Well, what's good to you? 87 wins, 88 wins, and maybe they feel like they're in it towards the end of September. Is that what good is to you? Or is good winning the division and, going to the ALCS? I'm not married to a number of, in 3 years, I'm expecting success. I can't play that game again.
Yeah.
I was so close on those timelines when experts would say, and Stone or Hawk or whoever you would talk and hear from, oh yeah, in 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, watch out for this team. They're going to be a monster. Hey, let's just see how it plays out. Let's just watch the games. Let's watch the moves that they make. Let's follow, the development. I am not, hanging by any amount of years, Pat, this time around.
Well, and you know what makes me laugh? Do you remember anytime you talk about the visions, because there's been a lot of vision talk lately, it makes me think of that episode of The Simpsons when Homer ate the chili and it made him see a spirit animal, and he was like having the hallucinations with. I think
it was voiced by Johnny Cash.
Yes,
I could be wrong.
Yes, yeah. You're exactly 100% correct. So that every time I think of that, I could just envision like Pedro and Chris like eating some atomic chili and just having some visions of what the season will be like. But it'll be interesting nonetheless. And it's funny, again, I've at this baptism today talking to I guess he would be my cousin-in-law, Carmen, who doesn't listen to the show, but he follows us. He says, I've only told him to listen. He's a huge Sox fan. I've only told him to listen for 6 years. He hasn't yet taken me up on that offer. But he says, hey, what do you guys talk about? How do you guys find things? I'm like, dude, I don't understand how you don't understand how there aren't things to talk about. This will be the best time of the year for us right now, Nick, is because there's speculation and there's rumor. Yeah. And it's actually a little bit more, it'll be more fun during this time of the year than the actual games, because the games are going to be, the trial and error.
I mean, and breaking down those games is going to be tough in 2024. You're right, Pat. Like that's the spirit of this podcast, as we kind of have been talking about, here we are kicking off season 6, and, what this podcast has meant to you and I, and why it got started. And it's just trying to mimic conversations that you and I have had for 20 plus years as diehard Sox fans. We could talk in circles and we could throw our opinions at each other, And there is no right or wrong answer. It's subjective based on the angle that you come from. But I love this kind of stuff. I love this fan centric. We call this podcast fan centric because this is just a couple of fans. We don't have press credentials.
You got a press credential, right?
For a short period of time.
Well, you're a pretty big deal. You got to sample all kinds of food.
Of course.
And if you still have it, you could probably be at the winter meetings right now.
Yeah, Nashville.
If you just had one of those old-timey hats with the press, in the side of your hat, that could have been you, man.
With one of those old-timey cameras with the bulb that pops out.
Yes.
That wouldn't give me away.
Yeah, I'm Nick Murawski, Good Guys Talk Back. What do you think of the White Sox this year, Mr. Reinsdorf?
And then keep that shtick the entire time. Mr. Reinsdorf, like he's there, like he's asking questions. Maybe he would look at me as an old-timey reporter and be like, I like the cut of this guy's jib. I'm going to talk to this guy. Give him an exclusive.
Now, this is the kind of technology I like to see.
Branch Rickey kind of stuff. Yeah. So, there's always stuff to talk about. And with all of the different avenues that the White Sox can go down this offseason, to me, it's hey, it's frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. My stomach turns, talking about this team and the dysfunction and the failure. It's maddening. It absolutely is. But I love it. I absolutely love it. This is my team, multi-generational. Like, this is what I was born into. And I don't, I can compartmentalize and I can separate the Chicago White Sox, even though this sounds weird, and the entity of the Chicago White Sox and the Jerry Reinsdorf stuff and the stuff that makes me really furious about how poorly things go and have gone under his rule. I can separate that from what the White Sox mean to me and my family and friends as the bigger picture. And this is the thing that I love to talk about, that, I don't know what else I would talk about that just brings the passion and the fire out of me. Am I unhappy about what they do? Of course. Is it tough sometimes to bring yourself to watch? Sure. I mean, it's going to be difficult in 2024, but I want to be here again for how this plays out. And this is, I think, a critical offseason.
Well, I think, this will be a fun week to watch. It'll be a lot of the rumor and the all this stuff going on, because there'll be big baseball news. I'm sure that'll come out, whether it's White Sox related or not, this week at the winter meetings. But I have to ask you a couple things. Do you think Tony's at the winter meetings? Do you think he's there as a consultant? And is Jerry telling other teams that he's available to talk to anybody? He's there as a consultant because he's such a good baseball man. If you need help, Tony's here to help. We've got him propped up in the vestibule over there, and he's ready to talk to anybody that wants to talk to him.
Do you think he's being outsourced? He's, he Reinsdorf's renting him to other teams, for a fee. Tony can consult with you during these winter meetings.
I don't see why not. You have him in one of those booths, in the movie Big, the Great Zoltar, and you put him in there. You put a coin in there, and then he spits out his advice to you.
Yeah.
I think
I think Getz is going to need people to talk to. I think he's going to need some guidance, some experience. I don't know what, if he's made certain friends in the industry or how that all goes, but I think he's going to need some help navigating his way through this. He's got a lot on his shoulders, man.
Yeah.
He's got a lot as somebody that's never done this before. And this is a critical offseason. It really is. So, we want action as fans. You want action. And I'm at a point where I have hated what has gone on the last couple of years. Whatever they've been trying to do and the identity of the team that they were trying to put together, it did not work. I'm sorry. And we were in the AL Central. It just didn't work. So you have to divorce yourself of these pent up obsessions of this is how I think we have to be. And this is the type of team. And maybe that has gone away with Hahn and Williams. That is where I will say maybe Getz comes in and sees things differently, might not be able to figure out how to make it how he wants it, but says, you know what, that went away with Hahn and Williams. That those type of teams that we were building and the type of players that we were clamoring for, that's not the way I want to do things. I'm on board for that because I think there has to be a different direction. And that's where I'm also like, don't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's how I was in the fall of 2016. If you're going to do this, do it. Go all in with your rebuild. And I know that troubles a lot of people, but if you're going in a different direction, just go and don't look back. But you got to be careful.
But can you really go all in with it, Nick? Though I mean, you've kind of put yourself all in with from a pitching perspective, but you're really not going to be able to do anything with your third baseman. He's
what you can move, Pat. I would say.
Can you move an Andrew Vaughn at this point?
Or you can,
or is that a thing too, where you look at it and go, we've invested way too much. This is our guy. We really have to try and find a way to see it through. Or is it not really their guy because that was Rick Hahn's guy?
I think that's to that point. That was Rick Hahn's guy. And how much have they really invested in this guy? I mean, I would say for the most part, they let Abreu walk, which they were never going to give him that type of money that he got from Houston. That was the big investment, right? Like they let Abreu go so they could focus on Andrew Vaughn. If you don't think Andrew Vaughn's the guy and there's someone else out there that you think fits your mold as a first baseman power hitter, then you package Andrew Vaughn. You make Andrew Vaughn available.
Yeah.
I see the potential. I see what people are saying of how can you let Eloy Jimenez, like you see his swing. Do you see what he can do? He could hit this many home runs. He could be that. He could. He absolutely could, but he's not doing that. And he hasn't done that for us. So I can't live in the could world. Now, it's always a gamble when you go after certain players, but I think you have to cut bait with some people if they don't fit your mold. And that's Getz. That's on him right now.
Yeah. Well, it will be interesting. I would love, it would be great to have some type of surprise this week in a positive way for the White Sox, right, Nick? It would be like a shocking development in the positive way, but I think you and I are of the mind that that's not going to happen. And we're in it now. We're back. We're back in the roller coaster. We're ready to jump in the ride. The lap belt is coming down. If you're like me, it doesn't go down all the way because your thighs are too thick and you're being told to exit the ride, sir.
For safety reasons.
Yeah. For safety reasons, you're too fat to ride this ride. It's happened. It's a true story.
It's a very long time ago.
Several times I've had to walk off the damn ride because the lap belt won't come down all the way. Anywho, but we're there. That's where we are. This is the winter meetings. We're at the start of the roller coaster ride, and whether it's a 5-year ride or a 2-year ride will be.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the years. Yeah, I'm in it, and we're in it, and this podcast is going to continue. I will probably watch just as many, if not more, games in 2024 than it's the same, man. It's nothing changes. It's just I can't stop, and that's my problem. And people have told me over the years, especially when I was doing Locked On, and I would get messages all the time of, I can't do it. I'm out. I don't know why anybody, is still with this team. And I get that. It's not for everyone. And I'm not saying like I'm a better fan or anything like that. That's just how I'm wired. I've tried to stop over the years. I can't, because this is my thing. So I'll be in it, and I want to see how this thing develops. I want to be there on the foundation like I was, and we were all back in 2016 and 17 and 18 of, I want to see this and then really be able to celebrate when it gets to that maturation, which was a short amount of time. It was a very small window. So yeah, I mean, there were some interesting articles, that I read about different directions where the Sox can go. There's no shortage of stuff that's going to be coming out this week. Scott Merkin had something that, Getz will eventually have to fill some starting pitching and bullpen voids on the roster, not to mention right field and possibly second base and catcher. That line right there from Merkin's article, I mean, you could have inputted that into just about any year over the last 5 years.
Yeah, Merck, he's celebrating the Wolverines Big Ten championship. He's looking ahead. He's just recycling the same article from the last several years.
Yeah,
he's not writing anything new.
No, that's just a plug and chug, copy paste. Comment about Maldonado. I saw that the Sox, among a few other teams, have shown interest in Martin Maldonado, 37 years old, played in 116 games last year. Probably some really anemic offensive numbers, but that is that's where we're at in catcher. Salvi Perez, Martin Maldonado, Corey Lee. I mean, that's another big issue of where is that future backstop.
We're like the United States of America. Give us your poor, humbled masses when it comes to catchers. We'll take you off. We'll take you over here.
I don't know if
you can't run anymore. If you're old, you can't
look. If it comes down between Perez and Maldonado, I mean, I don't know the money. It seems like a ridiculous money to go after and try to figure out this Perez situation and what they're going to, but maybe there's some chemistry with Pedro there. If those are the options, if those are the only options, I don't agree with it. I don't think those are good options. I wouldn't like those, but if those are the only things that they have in front of them, Maldonado, Perez, I guess you go with Perez, who's got a relationship with Grifol and Getz. They're not appealing at all.
Well, I think that's a more realistic option now that Tim Anderson's no longer on the team. I don't think that works if Salvador Perez and Tim Anderson.
You don't think they'd be able to coexist?
Oh, I don't think so. Not at all. Now that TA7 is no longer in that clubhouse, I think that opens the door wide open for Salvador Perez to come right in.
As Grifol said, he didn't have the leaders that he thought he had, which it should have started with Grifol. We know this. He should have been the leader that we all needed. But I think there's something about how the roster will be figured out where I do think he wants to put his guys around him. Mm-hmm. I think that's what he was missing last year. And he probably said to Getz and others is, I need more of my guys. I need guys that they know me. They know how I work. I need guys that I've worked with in the past. I need them on my team for whatever reason. I think that's, and maybe some organizations, probably a lot of organizations would say, well, if that's what you need, I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. You should be able to do this on your own, with the talent that we provide, manage, coach them up. You can't always have security blankets everywhere, but that's how the Sox might play it.
Well, like I've always said, your greatest players need to be your greatest leaders. And when you only have one guy really performing, nobody's going to follow anybody else. When everybody else sucks, it's why am I going to listen to you, Tim Anderson, who hasn't hit a home run all season, and you're getting, punched in the face at second base? Why would I listen to you? But yeah. That's just me.
So, as we wind things down, really appreciate all of the subscriptions with our YouTube channel. I would love to get this up to 500 subscribers by opening day. I think we can do it. I passing it along to other Sox fans. If you haven't subscribed yet, we do appreciate that on our Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Jerry talked, towards the end of the season, I think after the season, tried to make, sense of the whole shooting thing, which was all kinds of weird and bizarre. But what he said was, here's just a bit of that. Okay. So keep that in mind through this off season and beyond. One of the things that I owe the fans is to get better as fast as we possibly can get better. Speed is of the essence. I don't want this to be a long-term proposition. Again, most likely lip service, but that's where you have to hold people accountable. You have to hold people accountable to what they said. So if you're really thinking that way, Jerry, then you're going to go out and you are going to spend money when money is needed to spend for premium talent to fill holes. Yeah, you might think you spend a lot right now. You're going to have to spend more to get some of that premium talent. If speed is of the essence and you feel like you owe it to fans to get better as quick as possible, like DeYoung, Nicky Lopez, that's not going to do it. Okay, if you really want to get better quickly, you're going to have to make some other moves.
Yeah, you can't expect your GM to go out there and not give him the tools he needs to properly do his job. So if you're going to support him and give him what he needs to properly turn this around, then that's great. If you're not, he can't just wave the wand and make it happen just because you say you want it to happen quickly.
So you've got the draft lottery going on this coming week. You've got Rule 5 draft. So we'll definitely have some interesting tidbits to kind of break apart of what the Sox decide to do or don't do next episode. And whatever fallout we have, you never know. There might be an emergency pod this coming week if there's a big splash and we can make it happen. So before we get going here, you got your Pedro quote of the week. This happened right after the season finished. One of my favorite quotes from Pedro Grifol. Frustrating, educational, somewhat embarrassing, but I'm hungry and committed to getting it right. That was Grifol summing up the season. So he's got an off season. He'll have a spring training. We'll see what Getz and company do to solve that hunger in his efforts to get it right. I personally don't have a lot of faith at all in Grifol. I think that he's just not the right person for the job, but maybe getting his type of people around, maybe that'll help him out.
I'll give him because I have to. I'll give him another chance.
Yeah,
I think he, like most people, can improve, and we'll see. He's obviously not new to the game of baseball, and I don't think I'm not necessarily going to judge him this year on the wins and losses. I did last year a lot because we felt like it was a team that was going to be a lot better. But I think I'll judge him more on the in-game decisions and how he addresses things and how he disciplines his team and the moves that he makes and the doing the best he can with what he's given. But I'll try
setting
and
a tone.
Yeah,
setting a tone.
And I think I'll remove the wins and losses from the judgment of Pedro Grifol, just because I don't think that a lot of people are going to be able to win with the roster that he might be given. So it'll be an interesting thing. But thank you for the Pedro Grifol quote of the week, because I think we missed it last week, and I was saddened by that.
I'm sorry I left you like that. We also still have got a little bit of inventory left on Good Guys Talk Back t-shirts. Just hit me up with a direct message on Twitter X or find me Facebook. Just send me a message, and we got a little bit left, few shirts left. Got several out to people, heard back. That was a success. So got a few left. If you're interested in Good Guys Talk Back t-shirts, I'm sporting one right here. Extremely comfortable. $25 to your door. Hopefully, maybe new batch in 2024. We'll get rid of this. Wow. Yeah, we'll get rid of this inventory, and we'll churn out maybe some more stuff.
Look at you. Good for you.
Always a pleasure, Pat. This is therapeutic, and I enjoy this so much.
Yeah, happy anniversary, buddy. Thanks for everybody that listens and watches on YouTube.
Yep.
And this will be an exciting week. Hopefully, we have some news and things to talk about next week.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's just the Sox are in a better spot maybe,
Mm-hmm.
as every week passes here in the off season. Thank you so very much, folks, for joining on the YouTube feed live. Good Guys Talk Back. Subscribe to that channel. Pass it along. Audio available wherever you find your podcasts. We're on Twitter X at Good Guys TB. Got a Facebook fan page. Hey, for Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.